Bonjour and welcome to today's French lesson with me, Jennifer, your YouTube French teacher. I'd like to remind you of a few things before we get started today. One thing is if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, go ahead and do it, and that way you won't miss out on anything. Another thing is that if you're serious about studying French, learning French, and you would like to take some French lessons with me, you can do that. Just visit my website and you'll find all kinds of information there. You can also write me an email from the website if you have any questions. Okay, now concerning today's lesson, I would like for you to look down in the video description of this video. You'll see a link, and if you click on that link, it will carry you over to my blog, and that will make this lesson so much more interesting and profitable for you because you have the whole text version there. It's always nice to have something to read along with and then to be able to go back and take notes and that kind of thing. So voila, today we have lots and lots of things to talk about concerning the first conditional or C clauses. There are many different kinds of C clauses. We're not going to address them all in this lesson today. Today we're talking about the first conditional. So you probably don't know what that means, and that's why I'm here. I'll explain it to you. So I'll give you a second to get over to the blog. A really good idea would be to, I think, maybe have another idea, but if you could have the blog open in one window and the video in another, that way it'll be like we're in a classroom together. Go write any of your questions down in the comments, and I'll be sure to get back to you. All right, so if you are over on the blog now, let's talk about just a little outline of what will be covered in this lesson. First of all, we're going to talk about what a C clause is in the first place, what tenses are used in the first conditional, and I'm going to give you examples for each type of C clause that we talk about. As always, I have created some Quizlet study sets for you so that you can listen to the lesson and then go on Quizlet and practice and master what you've learned. If you haven't yet signed up for my YouTube French class on Quizlet, there's also a link down in the video description. It's free. All you have to do is click on it, sign up, and then you'll have access to lots and lots of Quizlet study sets to help you improve your French. At the end of this lesson, there's something new, something I haven't done before. It's a little quiz, and you'll find that on the blog just beneath the video link. And so once you've practiced and you feel like you're ready for a quiz, go on and take that and then let me know how you do on it. Voila. Okay, so let's get going here. I've told you that today we're going to be talking about the first conditional. So the first thing we need to do is talk about what a C clause is. The word C, it's probably the first question you have. What does C mean? C has a lot of different meanings in French, but when we're talking about C clauses, it means if. So a C clause is kind of like an if this and that happens, then something else will happen. It's an if and then kind of clause. C clauses, also known as conditionals or conditional sentences, are used to express what could happen if some condition is met. So the C clauses indicate possibilities which may or may not actually happen, and they refer to the present, past, and future, and we're going to be dealing with all of those tenses today. If you're not familiar with some of these tenses, how to form them, on the blog I've also put in some links that you can follow and either get a refresher course or learn something new for the very first time with me. Voila. So these conditional sentences have two parts: the condition, which is the C clause, and then the result clause, which is also the main clause of the sentence, which will indicate what will happen if the condition of the C clause is met. So here we go. Let's have a look at the tenses that we can use in the first conditional. Now, something to remember is that when we're talking about using these C clauses, I'm going to show you certain combinations of tenses that are used together, and they're really not variable. The really nice thing is that if you, I guess you're an English speaker because you're watching this and I explain everything in English, the really good thing is that C clauses, when you translate them into English, they work exactly the same way as we use them in English. So you're going to find that, I think, to be very useful in understanding what the C clauses mean and in remembering which tense you have to use. So the C part, the first part that we're going to look at is C clauses that involve the present tense. Okay, so today we're going to talk about 3 C clauses which involve the present tense, and the C part must always be in the present tense. Here we go. Now the first kind of C clause is going to involve a present tense verb in the C part of the clause, and then another present tense verb in the result clause. So that said, this kind of C clause, I'm going to go through it with you because it may come up that you need to use it sometime. You may see it written somewhere, but to be perfectly honest with you, this is not the most common kind of C clause. Let's go through them in English and French. Look at the first one. Si tu ne veux pas y aller, tu restes à la maison. So this is a very it's something that you would do when you're speaking in very general terms. So what that means in English is if you don't want to go, you stay at the house. We're not talking about a particular situation. We're just talking about in general, well, you know, if there's some place that you have been invited to go and you don't want to go, then you don't go. You stay at the house. You see how we're using the present and present? Here's another one. Si on a faim, on mange. If we're hungry, we eat. Wow, it's just a general statement. Okay, present, present. So that's pretty simple. The next kind of C clause I want to talk to you about involving the present is going to be the present and future. So, if you haven't yet learned the futur simple, I want you to know that you probably have learned the futur proche. That's where you use aller plus an infinitive. So when I say that we're going to make these C clauses using the present and the future tenses, just know that even though I'm using the futur simple in my examples, you can also use the futur proche if that's what you're more comfortable with. The futur proche is still the future, okay? So that's fine if you do that. If you do want to learn how to use the futur simple, I've put a link right there on the blog toward a lesson that will bring you to a lesson where I'll explain it all to you. Okay, so let's have a look at these examples I've written for you. Si tu parles français tous les jours, tu auras un meilleur niveau. So si tu parles, that's the present tense. If you speak French every day, you will have a better level. Tu auras un meilleur niveau. You see how that works? Now you could also flip that around and say tu auras un meilleur niveau si tu parles français tous les jours. No one says that the si clause has to come first. Just like in English, we could say you'll have a better level if you speak French every day. So either way, whatever it is that works best for you. Next example. Si tu viens à la réunion avec moi, tu vas mieux comprendre. So here I've just thrown in a futur proche for you so that you can see what that looks like. If you come to the meeting with me, si tu viens, that's present tense, you are going to understand better. Now, tu vas mieux comprendre. I think it really does sound better when you use the futur simple. Tu comprendras mieux. Mais bon, tu peux utiliser le futur proche si tu veux, il n'y a pas de problème. Okay, the next one. Present. This is the last kind of C clause that we're going to talk about today that involves the present tense. So this is going to be the present and the imperative. So the imperative tense is often called the command form. That's what it is. When you use the imperative, you're giving a command. Also have a link there for you if you want to hear and watch a lesson on forming the imperative. Voilà, let's have a look at these examples. Finis tes devoirs avant le dîner si tu peux. Voilà. Finis tes devoirs avant le dîner. Finish your homework before dinner. You see how that's the imperative form? We don't have tu in front of fini. It's just like in English when we're giving a command. I remember we used to call that the understood you. It's understood. It was always in parentheses. You don't have to say it. You don't have to write it. It's the same in French. You just leave the tu off, and all of a sudden you have a command form. So finish your homework before dinner, si tu peux, if you can. And there is your present tense form of the verb pouvoir. Next example. Si tu n'es pas trop fatigué, lis cet article ce soir. Could have flipped it around and said, lis cet article ce soir si tu n'es pas trop fatigué. If you're not too tired, si tu n'es pas trop fatigué, lis cet article. Read this article tonight. So the lis is in the command form there. There's no tu in front of it. All right. So, now let's move on to C clauses that involve the passé composé. There are also 3 kinds of C clauses that we're going to look at concerning the passé composé. It's just 3 different combinations. And you'll see that they also correspond quite nicely to the way that we say them in English. So the passé composé plus the present. And here also you have some links to the Quizlet to practice, and then links to lessons on the passé composé if you need a little refresher course on that. The first example we have here. Si tu n'as pas fini tes devoirs, tu ne peux pas sortir. If you haven't finished your homework, passé composé, si tu n'as pas fini tes devoirs, you cannot go out. Tu ne peux pas sortir. And then the next example. Si tu as perdu ton emploi, tu ne peux pas partir en vacances. If you lost your job, that's the verb perdre in the passé composé. Si tu as perdu ton emploi, tu ne peux pas, present tense, you cannot go on vacation. All right, so that one, using the passé composé in the present, is kind of like what I said about the present and present tense together. They are correct, and these are legitimate forms of C clauses, but they're not the most common. All right, they're more speaking in general terms. In general, if you haven't finished your homework, you can't go out. We're not talking about tonight. If you don't finish your homework, you won't go out. That's a different kind of C clause, involving the future. The next one, passé composé in the future. A couple of links to help you there for studying. First example, si tu n'as pas pris tes gants, tu auras froid aux mains. Si tu n'as pas pris tes gants, tu auras froid aux mains. So, if you didn't bring your gloves, that's the verb prendre here. We can use prendre. It's like you're saying if you didn't take your gloves, because prendre means to take, right? So if you didn't take your gloves, you will have cold hands. Tu auras froid aux mains. Remember, to be cold in French, we have to say to have cold. So that's why we're using the verb avoir here in the futur simple. Next example. Si tu n'as rien mangé ce matin, tu auras faim. Si tu n'as rien mangé, if you didn't eat anything this morning, you will be hungry. Avoir faim. That's another one where we say to be hungry in English, and in French it's to have hunger. So tu auras faim in the futur simple. We could have said tu vas avoir faim if you prefer to use the futur proche. I know sometimes when you're writing, it's easy to think about all these different tenses because you're used to writing, especially if you've been learning either on your own or in a classroom setting where you do a lot of writing. Sometimes when you speak, you're just not so quick to pull up all those tenses. So if futur proche is easier when you're speaking, just go for it, because the one thing that you want to do is speak French, and the goal is to communicate. The goal is not to use all kinds of fancy tenses, right? That's true. Okay, let's look at the last kind of C clause that I'm going to show you today. The passé composé plus the imperative. Now remember, that's the command form. So, par exemple, first example. Fais-moi savoir si tu n'as pas compris la leçon. Fais-moi savoir. Let me know. Let me know if you did not understand the lesson. Now, if that fais-moi looks a little confusing to you, then watch the lesson on forming the imperative, and it will make a lot more sense to you. Let me know if you didn't understand the lesson, and you can let me know that too in the comments if you have any questions. Okay, and the last example for today. Si tu n'as pas encore vu le film, regarde-le avant d'en parler. Si tu n'as pas encore vu le film, if you haven't yet, that's the encore yet, if you haven't yet seen the movie, watch it, regarde-le, le is le film, watch it before talking about it. Okay, so now my suggestion would be for you to go on and practice the Quizlets a little bit. I made 6 separate Quizlets for you. That way, sometimes it's easier when everything's not all jumbled together. So you have a Quizlet for each different kind of C clause that we've talked about in this lesson. Once you've taken the time to practice those, then you'll be ready, I think, to take a quiz. So if you're on the blog, go down just beneath where you see this video, and there's a a first conditional quiz with 15 questions, and you have to choose the correct tense to put in the blank. And I think that you're going to do very, very well on that. So again, let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Certainly let me know if you're ready to start some French lessons on Skype. And if you haven't yet liked the Facebook page, we're getting to be a pretty big community over there. I would love to have you so that we can interact more often. Merci beaucoup et à très bientôt. Next time, we're going to talk about more C clauses. So if you've watched this and you think, yeah, I know these C clauses, I've seen them before, but there are some others that were a little more complicated, don't you worry. The second conditional and third conditional will be the very next lessons that I provide you with. Okay, merci beaucoup tout le monde. Bonne journée or bonne soirée, whatever it is for you, et à très bientôt. Au revoir.